JKB back with another episode. Today on the show, we'll be reviewing Ghost of Tsushima. Thank you so much to Sony for sending over the review copy. A few years ago, I made the decision to avoid all media that would probably spoil my experience of this game, and I knew that I'd be reviewing it on the show. So I went into this with very little knowledge of exactly what it would be. I was aware that it was about a samurai, and that it would have serious katana sword combat. Now that I've played the game and spent a ton of time slicing people down, it's easy to say that this game is the best samurai game that you'll probably ever play. The team at Sucker Punch clearly took inspiration from Japanese cinema featuring samurai, most notably Akira Kurosawa and his film Seven Samurai. The game even features an official Kurosawa filter that they went to the family to get kind of a blessing for. It's an amazing feature in the game, and something that you definitely will want to fiddle with if you do pick it up and you're a fan of Kurosawa's films. The story of Ghost is set on Tsushima Island in the year 1274 and revolves around one of the last remaining samurai, Jin Sakai, during the first Mongol invasion of Japan, and as always, I'm going to avoid spoilers in this review. The first notable thing about the game is how visually spectacular it is. It's almost like the team was designing the world to be a character in itself. It's the nature around the world that holds this game together, and it's masterfully done with an artistic vision that's very seldom seen in massive open world games. I played in 4K on my PlayStation 4 Pro. The footage you see is from my PlayStation 4 Pro with super sampling turned on, and the footage is at 1080p 60 frames per second. The level of art in this game is brilliant, and everything you see is eye-pleasing. The day and night cycle is layered with a thick atmosphere of haze and fog in the far-off distance. And I think it's fair to call this one of the most beautiful games that I've ever played. One of the cool features of this game felt like a natural mechanic, but one that you hardly see in open-world games, and that is the use of wind. Wind is used as a directional notification system in this game. You could set it up to go to any waypoint, and in the game it's called your guiding wind. All you need to do is swipe up on the touchpad of your controller, and the wind will actually reveal the direction of where you should be going. I think it's brilliant, and it gives the game more of a connection to nature that most games really have a hard time doing. And since this game is mostly about nature at times and the peace of nature, it's cool to use guided wind. However, at times it is a little confusing to know exactly where you need to go, so you will be swiping up on your touchpad a lot to reveal exactly where you need to go. The world is split up into 3 sections on the map with hundreds of interesting interactions that you'll find as you freely explore the world. The idea of an open world without limitations hasn't been this functional since Breath of the Wild, where it appears their inspiration came from. You'll find tons of items to collect across the land, as well as items that you'll use to upgrade at camps, which are also found across the world. A very important function is fast travel, and once you've cleared most of the locations out of enemies, you'll be able to fast travel back to that location. The music is incredible and always seems to come in at the exact right moments to elevate epic moments. There really isn't else much to say about the music in the game because it's appropriate and very balanced, and it fits perfectly. At one random point, I came across a hot spring, and it's used to expand your health, but also shows an extremely firm butt of Jin, the main character, and well, I can't show you that here in this video, but it's funny to think that somebody had to model his firm buttocks, and I'm sure it's not modeled after mine, that's for sure. Or is it? It isn't. One of the coolest features is just before combat situations, you'll have the chance to do a standoff with your enemy. Now, these are taken directly out of classic samurai films. This has the feeling of a mini-game, and it's all about timing. You hold the triangle button down and release it at the right moment when your enemy is just about to attack. It's directly out of every samurai film you've ever seen, and helps kind of break up the usual combat in the game. It's incredible when you start a battle off using this feature. And you'll want to do it every single encounter in the game. I mean, it feels so good to pull off the correct timing in these standoffs. Of course, the game features skill points that are used to unlock a ton of new moves and abilities, and you'll collect skill points by doing random challenges in the game, and also by completing missions. There's a great RPG experience here, and the combat is mainly the focus of the RPG elements. Combat will go from simply using a sword within the first kind of 4 hours to using a bow, a sword, using throwing knives and sticky bombs all at once. Another major aspect of the game is the way that you, as Jin the samurai, actually stands, known as a stance. A stance is how Jin will hold his sword during battle. Each stance in the game is focused on defeating different types of enemies. You start the game out with your main stance, but I soon unlocked the second stance, which was a water stance. The water stance is used to take out enemies with shields much faster than the main stance. These are amazing to use in the game and switch. There's 4 different stances in the game, and you'll unlock them and be able to switch between them freely. You can even switch between them mid-attack to pull off epic battles. Another important thing to point out is that not only can you upgrade your weapons, but you can also unlock a ton of different attacks. It's actually very impressive how many unlocks this game has. There's unlocks for every section of it. It's ridiculous at times. Of course, you can also change what he is wearing, and you can change your kits, known as your sword kits in the game, and even upgrade your sword as you progress through the game. And most of these unlocks are going to give you an even better strategy to the combat. So it just layers on layers of combat, and by the end of the game you will be able to do things that are so crazy with the sword that you just won't believe it. The animation is very impressive during combat, but now since we're dealing with a weapon that doesn't really leave much to the imagination when it comes to what a katana can do in combat, you'll notice right away that combat is very quick if you master the use of the sword. You'll be able to block incoming attacks, which have a chance of staggering the enemy and leaving him open just enough for you to slice him in half. As I progressed deeper into the world, I started to take on larger groups of enemies all at once, and at times I was surrounded by at least 10 to 12 enemies, and this is where the enemy AI starts to shine. The group started to surround me, and I had no choice but to kind of fight my way out of that situation. And when I finally took out the final enemy of that group, I felt like a true samurai. It felt incredible. The world is so massive that you'll see a ton of open land at times, and for some people this can be slightly trying on your patience. But you'll have to completely overlook the incredible, beautiful landscapes just to feel this way. I mean, I think that the map was designed to be about peace and terror. It's about seeing the beauty in between the madness. It's about taking a breath in and enjoying the beauty, and that plays directly into the story and the mythology of the time of the samurai. It's a perfect mix, and if you don't see it that way, I think you're probably missing the point. As many of you know, I've been reviewing games for more than 10 years now, and it's rare that I get taken into a world quite like this. There's a very clear level of polish on every kind of aspect in the game, and that raises the design work into almost perfection on many of the different mechanics and visuals that you will see in the game. It's one thing to make a game work, but it's crazy to step back and say, let's take it to another level, and at times this game goes to that level. Here's my recommendation: play this game without using fast travel. Experience the land. You'll come across random events that you don't want to miss. There's also a ton of secrets around the world that you will discover, so take it slow. This game isn't something you want to rush through. It's masterfully done in terms of its open world adventure and deserves everybody's attention. Now, I've saved a few issues for the end of the review. There's a few things I want to bring up that helped me land on the score I did for this game. The beginning of the game does feel kind of flat and forced. It's clearly set up to be a tutorial, and I mean, if you're a veteran in video games, you'll notice that right away. I wasn't really involved with the characters, and for me it was only around 4 hours where I started to kind of get deeper into the story and into the characters. It was only after this time when I started to see more of Jin as a character and who he was and what he believes in. He grows on you over time, and around the 6-hour mark, you'll be kind of invested totally into the characters that you see on screen. It just sort of has a dull start to it. Another issue that I have to bring up is the camera. While you're fighting indoors or within villages, the camera will get stuck behind items that are in the world or just random doorways, and they will block the action on screen. While it's not something that totally ruins the whole experience overall, it's definitely something that bothered me a lot more than I would have liked. Lastly, some of the facial animation is very stiff and it's noticeable. However, it's not something that takes you out of the game completely. It's just sort of a nitpick on my end, but I mean, that's not going to play into the score. It's just something I wanted to bring up. Overall, putting these issues aside, I debated on what score to give this game all night. And while I would have loved to say it's a 10 out of 10, I wouldn't be true to myself, but I mean, it's damn close. I'm going to give it a solid 9 out of 10, and I know some may even rate it a little lower because the pacing can be quite slow at times and the issues I stated above, and maybe even some people might give it a 10 out of 10. But the bottom line is that this is a game that is, I mean, just one of the funnest open world games I've got to play in a long time, and that's mostly because of the combat. It's what keeps you playing. When you start to unlock different levels of combat in this game, you just want to go and have a sword fight. That's all you want to do. Missions are a lot of fun, though repetitive at times. There's just nothing like it on the market right now, and you won't feel as accomplished as a samurai in any other samurai game, period. You just will not. So combat, huge rating on the combat here. Huge fan of it. I think this is a solid beginning to, hopefully, a franchise. So thank you for watching my review. Solid 9 out of 10. Definitely a must play and a must own if you own a PlayStation. And I'll see you on the next episode of JKB.